hundreds of lives in our hands. And at the same time, everybody was telling us we should close the school, sell everything, try to recoup some of our losses. And um, it was a daily fight to try to keep things open. Um, my mom would cry every night over what had happened in her fear, and my father was paralyzed with uncertainty and gripped with total despair for the first time in his life. I'd never seen him like that.
If we are not making quantum leaps in the way that we show up as human beings to make difference in our world, we are definitely not moving forward fast enough. I am so glad to have with us today Ajit George, who is the director of Shanti Bhavan, a school in India, which is more than a school. Ajit, welcome.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I would love for you to, right off the bat, begin to explain to people what is Shanti Bhavan? What is it? How is it different than other nonprofits?
Yeah. Shanti Bhavan at its core is a boarding school that is designed to uplift the poorest of the poor in India, not simply economically deprived, but socially discriminated against. And so all of our students come from both the, uh, the poorest communities in the region, actually throughout most of the country, but we focus in the South. And they come from families that make less than $2 a day. So that's the starting point. But they also come from primarily the Dalit and other backward castes, which are a socially and religiously discriminated group within India, often denied opportunities of housing, access to temples and wells, as well as access to higher education and white collar professional jobs. And that's a community we really want to focus on because those are the ones in the most need and the ones that we can empower the greatest through our work. Every single child who comes to Shanti Bhavan comes to us at the age of 3.5, 4 years old. They start with us at a very young age, from preschool onwards. And they stay with us until they graduate from high school or 12th standard. From then, they go on to college supported entirely by us, either through scholarships we help them attain or that we pay for ourselves for college in India and in the US. Our commitment to every child is from the first day of school to the first day of work. And it has been a quantum leap in the experiences and the outcomes for our children. In that way, we're more than an education nonprofit. We're really a poverty alleviation nonprofit. Our goal is, at the end of the day, to ensure that every child who comes through our program is uplifted out of poverty and will never return to poverty. And they will have the power and the ability to uplift their families and help their communities out of poverty. And I think that's really the big difference between us. If you were to ask me what is the one thing that's different between us and other nonprofits, I think there's a lot of nonprofits out there that are schools, and their goal is education. And I tell my team, if we've educated a child, but they're still in poverty, we failed in the primary mission of our work. Our primary mission is to uplift a child from poverty.
Can you explain that a little more? That you've educated them, but they're still in poverty. How does that occur? Because a lot of people, like you're saying, they think by educating someone, you've already taken them to a level that, okay, I've gave you everything that I could. Is that true or is that not true?
Now, in a lot of cases, it's not true. And I'll give you some reasons why. It depends on your definition of education. Like the World Bank and a lot of institutions will talk about basic literacy. I'm sure you've heard about it, right? Basic literacy. What are the literacy rates for this region? And you're like, well, the literacy rates are 99%. You're like, oh, I guess everything's really great. Things should be good. Well, if all I could do was read or write and maybe do some basic arithmetic, I wouldn't hold the job that I have right now. The job I have right now requires a high level of education, a lot of soft skills training too, you know, interviewing skills and public speaking skills, the ability to work with teams, the work to lead groups, to be a good team player, to problem solve, critical analysis. All of that's part of it. All of that is part of our programming at Shanti Bhavan. We're making we're really bringing up children, and we're creating a holistic education program for the development of the human spirit.
How has Shanti Bhavan changed from the day it launched to today? Because it was launched by your dad,
That's
right?
correct.
How has it changed?
Yeah, my father started in 1997, so we're entering our 26th year of operation. I think when we first started, we didn't realize quite the scope of ambition. Um, my father always knew it was going to be a pre-K through 12th standard program, but he didn't think about in the initial years what it would mean about where did the kids go after they finished from 12th standard? Where did they go after they finished from high school? It was just too far ahead. That's 14 years in advance. So as the kids got older, we as a team started to have conversations about what's the next steps? Where do we go? What happens to the children after they finish 12th standard? We want them to go to college. We want them to have an opportunity that no one in their family has ever had before. In every single case, our children are often the first generation learners and the first generation to go to college. And so we wanted to make sure that door was open. So I think the first change was adding the scope that we would help our children get into colleges, either helping them acquire full scholarships, or we would pay for their college, not only their college, but their dorm, their clothing, their medical care, their food, all of the needs to get through college. And that we would create a, a network, a system to support them through college so that they had somebody to talk to, somebody to help them when they're encountering troubles in college, educational troubles, personal troubles, health crisis, all of those things, because their parents and their family really weren't equipped for that. So that was one of the major changes. I think the second change, I would say, I mean, there's been so many, but I think probably the most significant change in the recent years is our effort to educate them outside of India. Um, Going to college in India has been great, and we've had very, very, very successful kids come out of the program. But often they're still struggling for years to handle the challenges after they graduate and start working. Every single one of our kids, once they start working, are the primary or sole income earners of their families. And they're paying off generational debts that their parents and grandparents have accumulated over the years. They're paying medical bills, they're paying for food, electricity, and water. They're paying for educating their younger siblings. They're dealing with a lot of challenges. That's a lot for a 20-year-old or 21-year-old to take on. And, their starting salaries in India are decent, but, that's just a lot of debt. What we thought is if we can get them to top colleges in the US or in other countries, their income earning potential would be much higher after they got out of college, and that they could rapidly help their families overcome these difficulties instead of taking 5, maybe 10 years to overcome them. They could do it in 1 or 2.
Ajit, tell me a little more about the families they come from so that people have an understanding of why the choice of take them into a school that houses them, that feeds them, and all of that. Would you explain a little bit about their background?
Sure. Most of our children come from families. Let me rewind. What our surveys have indicated through many years of research is 70 to 80% of children come from families that have physical or sexual abuse occurring in the household, whether they themselves have been the victim of it or whether they've witnessed it and have secondary trauma from witnessing a sibling or their mother being abused. They are in households with high level of trauma. 90% plus, closer to 95%, I think, from our latest survey, have alcoholism in the family. Then there's also high levels of childhood malnutrition that occurs very early on. And of course, families that they come from, most of them don't have access to running water in the house, toilets. The girls will have to walk a mile at night to find a private place to go to the bathroom. Um, these are the kind of challenges they face. Then there is within the communities, often communities are filled with either discrimination against them, so religious persecution by others, higher caste or from different religions, or they will be facing violence within the communities. Murder is not uncommon among the children, the families of the children the families that the children come from. So between this nexus of violence and discrimination and deprivation, there isn't much chance for a child to get a good head start from the communities they come from. And Shanti Bhavan is this beautiful oasis. It's 30 acres of land. We have our own farm, so that all the food all grown on campus. The kids get to have. They know where their food comes from. They participate in the farming in their free time. They eat fresh food, vegetables, and fruits. We have cows on campus, so they drink fresh milk and yogurt. But most of all, it is a beautiful campus, away from violence, with a great amount of safety, and great amount of like love, a belief in them. And one of the things that I really think about that's unique about Shanti Bhavan is that we have a high standard and a high expectation from the children. We push them hard to do well. But I know through this from experience, and I think you do too, that if you tell a child, it's okay that you're doing terrible. I don't think you can do much better than that, right? If your expectations are really low, they know you don't believe in them. They know that you don't think they can do much more than what they're doing. When you tell a child, I know you can do this. I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I know you're going to fail a couple of times. That's okay. But I know you can reach the stars. They're going to know you love them, and they know that they believe in them. And a child knows when you believe in them, and a child knows when you don't believe in them. And I think we're the first people to ever believe in them in their lives. And that's powerful. I have had many kids come to me and tell me, it is your belief in me that makes me believe in myself. I'm always like, that's great, but I want you to love yourself and have belief in yourself. It shouldn't always come from me, but I am in that role as a guardian, and then as a a big brother to many of them. And I think that's the way a lot of our team and our administrators and our teachers act.
What's the vision, Ajit, for as they go forward and you have more kids enrolled? What is the vision that this is going to create for these families?
Yeah. I think of this as a couple of different levels. I think the first level is the individual story, and that should never be under appreciated. I'll give you a perfect example of a young lady by the name of Vincia. She's from the fourth class that graduated from our school. Her father is an auto rickshaw driver who is alcoholic, and her mother is a domestic servant. And she had a lot of challenges every time she'd visit home, but she loved her parents and struggled with her father's alcoholism and some of the violence she might have seen in the household. But she was always a great student at the campus as Shanti Bhavan. And when she graduated, she went on to Christ University in Bangalore, one of the top colleges in the area. And after she graduated, her first job out of college was at Amazon. And with that first salary, she was able to pay off some of the debts that her father had accumulated and take care of some of his medical bills. She put him through de-addiction therapy to help him deal with his alcoholism. She started educating her younger brother and taking off some of the burden from her mother. She worked for Amazon and then worked for a few other companies. Then finally, she went off and did her MBA at the Asia School of Business in Malaysia. her father at that point passed away. His alcoholism caught up with him, and he died. So she became not the primary, but the sole income earner for the family, taking care of her mother and her younger brother. After she graduated from her MBA program, she got a job at Google in a leadership position. But her uncle was murdered in gang violence in the area. And suddenly she was now in charge of the lives of not only her mother and her younger brother, but her aunt and all of her younger cousins. And this one young lady at the age of 26 is in charge of 8 other lives. That is the base level of success, is that one person is doing this. And she's not only doing this, but she's now helping her families get out of the slums and building homes for them. The second level, I think, is collaboration. One individual can impact maybe 8 people, maybe they can impact 20 people, maybe with great success they can do 50 or 100, which is something my father thinks about. But I think rather than the individual, I think about groups. Our kids all grew up together from the age of 3.5, 4 years old, and they know each other really deeply and they trust each other. As they enter into the workforce, they may start working in groups. Maybe they'll build a company together. Maybe they'll rise up in the ranks of companies together. Maybe they'll start an NGO together. Maybe they'll enter into politics together. And I think 4 or 5 Shanti Bhavan kids together can impact 1,000. Right? They can make systemic change in their communities. They can transform how their communities are. They can renegotiate, with landlords, and they can help on a political level. And then on a greatest scale, my hope is regional. That's, some of our kids will have such a powerful effect in society that they can change the direction and trajectory of society. We see it all the time. Individual leaders or bad leaders who are corrupt, impacting so negatively society. But the reverse can happen too. And I believe in that. And I believe in our kids have the ability to do that.
I thoroughly enjoyed watching Daughters of Destiny on Netflix. And honestly, that's how I found out about you and was so thrilled to see something that was launched that was intended not only to take the kid through an education system, but to actually begin to change the norms that come in their lives. What are some of the things that come up as these kids are going through and seeing a different life than the life that they grew up with? What are some of the challenges that you guys have to face as their teachers, as their mentors, as everything that you might not have even thought that it's going to come up?
Yeah. No, I'm really glad, you being able to learn about us from Daughters of Destiny. And then that series is great, but it captures 7 years of our lives. The director followed us for 7 years. And over those 4 episodes, you get to watch, snapshots from those 7 years. But also there's so many pieces that are missing. And I think the larger pieces that you might not see in that series are a lot of the individual conversations we're having with the kids to help them both on an individual challenge as well as a group challenge. One of the things we do in the assembly every day is there's a virtue that's read like courage or honesty, and we have an open conversation, not just read about this virtue, but discuss what that means in our individual lives in the assembly. And I had never been to a school that had done that, but I thought it was important to do that, is to talk about it and talk about individual failures. Like I will always get up on stage and I'll talk about the mistakes I've done in, resilience or discipline or, honesty, and admitting when I've lied in the past and how that was hurtful to another person. And that's, I think, really helpful because then it opens the door for conversation where the kids themselves will be like, oh, Ajit has been honest with us about how he has failed in every one of these things. If he can be honest, then I can too. And I can talk about my failures and my insecurities and my fears. And what I find is that really carries in throughout the day. We'll end that with that discussion with, I'll ask for volunteers to say, hey, who's going to try to practice resilience in a small way throughout their day for the rest of this day? We'll get some hands raised, and the kids will come back the next day and we'll have a discussion. How did it go? Did you fail? Did you succeed? Sometimes they'll have failed and they'll admit why they failed. And it's really great. And I use that just as an example of the small discussions we have. The other ones are just the really big ones where we discuss some of the hardships the kids face at home and we get into it really deeply. The complexities of what is the dynamic of family life and what are the things that they're really struggling with at home, and what if things that maybe have happened to them. And over the many years I've been in the organization, I've learned how to navigate these conversations with kindness and gentleness and supportiveness, and to help reaffirm their humanity and their personhood, and guide them to a better place, a place of healing. And I think then the third part is having them think about what their role is in the world. I think there's two pillars that we think at Shanti Bhavan that are equally important. The first one is, and it's pretty obvious from the series, that we have a high push on success, that we tell them, hey, this is an incredible opportunity. You have gotten this golden ticket that many people want, but you have it, you're here, seize it and do the best you can with it. Achieve great grades, go on to good jobs, get good jobs that allow you to take care of yourselves and to help your family, right? High level of success. But the second pillar that may not have been as obvious in the series is tons of conversations about civic and social responsibility. We talk about the people who helped the school, and we don't say, hey, you need to give that donor, money back. They're not expecting anything in return. But what you might owe is to the child that steps in your shoes behind you. And who comes next? That you should pay it forward. That my biggest fear is we do not want a child who becomes very successful but has no moral conscience and has no desire to help the rest of humanity. And that's a huge part of our programming. So we'll have really just deep discussions about conversations from climate change to local discrimination in the village, right? So something big on a macro level as a global level to something that's the difficulty that they're having right here and now in their life at this very moment. How do we impact change positively on the local level, on the regional level, on the global level? And there are classes and curriculums around that too now.
Ajit, I wish I could take what you're teaching and put it globally to the world, honestly, because I believe, honestly, what you guys are teaching and the way that you've developed it could literally impact the entire world to have a kinder humanity, a better humanity that looks out for each other and giving a hands up and all the way. I would love to talk about a little bit about you and your background because you grew up in the States. So you've seen a world that is very different than what these kids come from, their backgrounds. And I think it's so hard for people to comprehend the difference, not only in mentality, but what we take for granted and how we show up versus someone who's given an opportunity and is now beginning to move forward. So tell me a little more about you and how you grew up.
Yeah. I want to just circle back to something you said in the beginning about how I think this could change humanity or the world. And I think about that a lot, in that it's a strange thing that we have structured the world around capital, the acquisition of capital, rather than the benefit of humanity and our environment, the larger world that we live in, that coexistence with the natural world, and why those priorities are that way, and that it worries me, but I also am hopeful that maybe we can raise kids who care about being successful, but also care about being decent human beings and being caring for the one world we have and treating our environment around us with care and thoughtfulness. So that is something that's important to me. As for myself, I grew up in the US. I grew up in the New Jersey, New York area. And, it was an interesting childhood because I saw my parents, who were both, immigrants who came to America, the first in their families to do so. And their struggle to make something of themselves and grow up from very, very modest means in the beginning to significant wealth over the course of my childhood. I could just sort of see it as the years went by because my father started his own company and that company became successful. But one of the things that was really deeply ingrained in me, and I think that stuck with me and has governed me throughout all of my life, is a deep sense of humility, um, an appreciation for what I have, and not an expectation for more. Um, on one hand, it was hard for my parents to maybe shield me from the obviousness. You start to see the external trappings of wealth, and you start to realize that you have something different from other people. On the flip side, uh, you know, my parents were very much not people who spoiled me, and everything I got was very, very modest, from toys to any clothing or anything like that. Very, very modest each step of the way. Books were probably the biggest present I got on a regular basis, and I had a great love of reading, so that was easy enough. Um, my first car, I got at 19, and it was a very old used car that was barely functioning, that would cost, I think, $500, right? And I had gone to a wealthy private school, and I saw all of my classmates with like Porsches and BMWs and so on. So it was both jarring to see that, and then but also really grounding. At the time, you know, if I were to tell something to parents, particularly parents of means, and if you're coming from, family that's able to afford a bit more, there's this enormous pressure from your kids to ask for more, and you as a parent want to give them more because they are feeling bad because their neighbor or a classmate has it. I think the more you can have real conversations with your kids and explain to them why that isn't the best way to do it, and that they may not be happy with it right now, but it is better for them. Um, you I think will do a great service to them. I think it helped me keep my head on straight, and has shaped and formed who I am today. I think the other biggest thing, was the sense of charitable giving from my parents from a very early age. I remember the first time my father had signed up with a little nonprofit to sponsor, I think, a child in Ethiopia. And he explained to me why he should be sponsoring a child. And I was maybe 9, 10 years old. I was very young. And he was explaining to me this and a little bit about the child's life and the information we got from the sponsorship package and the importance of doing this. And he did this every single step of the way. He would always give either locally or globally, and he always explained to me why that was important. And of course, when he started Shanti Bhavan, that was the ultimate example as to why we should give. Um, I have seen a lot of my classmates from younger days go on to personal financial success while or professional financial success while personally struggling deeply with their day-to-day meaning in life. Who are they? What are they? Why are they here? And for me, ever since I started working with Shanti Bhavan, that is not a question that I have had to ask myself. The work has given me the greatest amount of meaning, and the most powerful sense of being that I have ever had. And I'm tremendously lucky for that.
Would you mind covering a little bit about when 2008 hit and a lot of the financial crisis hit, and you guys are covering everything for these kids?
Yeah.
How did that affect the school, and how did it affect you and changed you as a leader?
Yeah. That was an incredibly dark and hard time. Um, it's usually a story my parents don't really love me telling, but I'll share it. My my family had devoted all of its wealth to our work in India. And beyond Shanti Bhavan, we did a bunch of other things like community development programs, a School of Journalism, to help have open and free press in India, but also the largest testing and treatment of lead poisoning ever done in the world was conducted by my family, and it helped introduce unleaded gasoline throughout India. It's a groundbreaking effort led by my family and funded by my family. All of this cost a lot of money. My father's an entrepreneur who's a strong visionary and doesn't have a lot of time to waste. So if he couldn't get people to join him, he would just go and do it himself. At the same time, my father had entrusted a close family friend with a lot of our finances. And at the time of the crisis in 2007, 2008 period, it all came out that we had been defrauded by this family friend, and in a similar way that you could think of like as Bernie Madoff, or any of the other frauds. And between that and the collapse of the global markets, overnight we were wiped out. And I remember those first days of utter crushing despair and complete fear as to what would happen next. The entire organization and everybody there depended on us. And we had all of these kids who we had promised a better life to. And all of the staff members who were working for us, some of them themselves from poor backgrounds and poor communities, who had solid, stable jobs with us. Hundreds of lives in our hands. And at the same time, everybody was telling us we should close the school, sell everything, try to recoup some of our losses. And it was a daily fight to try to keep things open. My mom would cry every night over what had happened and her fear. And my father was paralyzed with uncertainty and gripped with total despair for the first time in his life. I'd never seen him like that. And he came to me to
if we are not making
step in and somehow help. And so I didn't know what to do. I had no experience in this. I had worked in nonprofit, but never in fundraising. I had to sell off all of the family assets and try to settle with debtors and creditors while simultaneously trying to find money for the school. And every day was a fight, and every day was a lot of misery and a lot of self-doubt. Days where I didn't think we could go on. Days where I thought it would just be easier for it all to end. And so I didn't know what to do, but I also knew that I could not give up on those kids. I think the biggest thing was those kids had trusted their lives to us, and their parents had trusted their lives to us. And I wanted to do right by them, and I wanted to give them the future and hope that they deserved. At the same time, I wanted to find some way for my parents to help them and then to uplift them. And so it was so much struggle for months and years to rebuild. A lot of crushing fears and a lot of doubts about what would happen next. But I think the biggest thing was I learned that community can make a big difference. First, our family, my uncles and aunts rallied around and helped us. But then the people who'd gotten to know Shanti Bhavan over the years and believed in our vision and believed in what we were doing, and we'd never asked them for money or asked them for help, they stepped up at that moment and said, we're here with you and we believe in your vision. So small donations as little as $5 to $10 would come in, and sometimes it'd be $1,000, and sometimes somebody would be really generous and give $10,000. And it was those things where it just added up. But we struggled for months and years. It was so hard for so long. But now we're finally in a much better place. Still a lot of challenges ahead of us, but as we have the capability now to expand to a second school, and I'm really proud of it. I think you learn a lot about yourself in that moment, though. You learn what your capacity is to overcome, to face incredible obstacles, your own self doubts, your own fears, so many external pressures coming down at you. how to withstand it and how to rebuild yourself, your own sense of being, your own sense of dignity, because a lot of people doubted us at that time too. You know, we had a lot of friends, but there were a lot of people who were definitely not friendly and pretty angry with us. Um, and it erodes your sense of self. And so you have to rebuild at that point. And we did.
Ajit, thank you for sharing that, first of all. I know it's not easy to talk about things that affect you personally, but they have made you who you are in a sense as a better leader, as a better communicator. Uh, and I think it changed the way that you look within the school itself and how you work with the kids. Am I right in that assumption? Did you guys share with the kids what's going on? Did you make them understand? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times people shield their kids from stuff.
Yeah. I don't tend to. My father has. He's a little bit more of an older generation that believes that like it's the burden of the parent to keep all the hardships from their children. And so he doesn't share as much as I do. I do because I think it's valuable for people to understand, especially children to understand the obstacles that they will face potentially. It may be different, it may look different, but to understand what those obstacles look like, understand what failure looks like, and they understand that failure is not the end. It can be a place of hardship and pain, but it can also be a place of trying again, new beginning. And so I try to be as open and transparent as I can with the kids about um, what we went through. Sometimes it's hard to discuss and talk about. You know, there's so much that went through, so it has to be in like pieces of information about. You know, here's what the first few days look like. Here's what the next few weeks look like. Um, you know, and I try to explain in more detail. But I try to share with them so they understand, so they have some reference points too. And if they've encountered things that are similar or anything like it, they'll know that like they can overcome it because it's possible to get through it. But that sometimes you need to ask for help. Sometimes you need to work with the community. And sometimes you just need to believe in yourself when there's no reason to. Sometimes it's just waking up and tackling the things in front of you. Every day, you know, during that crisis, like I tried it hard to not think about the larger things. I just try to think about these are the things I need to do today. Like this is what I have to accomplish today. And then I will worry about tomorrow, you know. I'm just putting one step ahead, one foot ahead of the next and keep on walking.
I love that you're breaking it down that way because we've all heard how to eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Not that we want to eat an elephant, but breaking it down to the bits and pieces. Because running a nonprofit, you said it earlier, is not easy. There's
Yeah.
a lot of challenges. Would you mind sharing what are some of the things that you guys work on and struggle in that hopefully as a community that's listening, can we contribute? Can we help? What ways can we help you guys make a difference?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest is always financial. I think it's interesting that like, you know, we value like, you know, hedge funds or private equity or these tech companies that like, okay, maybe they'll make your life a little easier, possibly, maybe they make your life a little bit more complicated. I don't know. It depends on your point of view. But we think about nonprofits as to like do big things with the tiniest of budgets, right? We expect large outcomes from nonprofits with very little money and bare bones support. In that, you know, nonprofit people should be working as like you know saints or monks with so little. And I think that is one of those places where you know, if you want great outcomes, you should invest in the same way. You know, you should invest it like you're investing in a company that you expect the stock to go up really high. You're like, sure, you're not getting in a financial return, but you are getting an outcome return. The biggest one is always a financial. You know, we're in the process of building a second school. We're upgrading our dorms for the kids. You know, we're expanding some of our living quarters for teachers so that we can accommodate teachers who've got families so they can stay on campus as well. So there's a lot of different goals we're trying to achieve. I think that's always the hardest obstacle ahead of us. The second I think that we're often trying to do is always looking for great opportunities for our kids to accelerate their careers. They're all doing well at different companies, but we're always looking to like make new partnerships with companies and organizations that might be able to offer an internship or a job opportunity to a kid. And, those are things that I like to strategize about, and then part of the larger vision. So those are kind of the main ones. And I think as we start to expand, we're opening new chapters in different countries. We've got a chapter in Canada. We've got a chapter in the UK. I might be giving away something that I think we're going to announce soon, that we're about to open a chapter in Australia. And so we're excited to open chapters in other countries, so that our kids, not only that we can get financial donations from those countries, but also that we can send our kids to college there, or that they can have job opportunities there too. So those are some of the big things ahead of us.
So when you're saying you're opening a center, does that mean it's a school or what
No,
is it?
no,
Okay.
it's a chapter, meaning you think about it in the same way that like it's a legal entity. Like local people in the area have decided to like create a wing of the nonprofit, so that they can receive charitable donations, and they have, usually it's just volunteer staff, though hopefully at some point there'll be paid staff members in those countries, that they can start working with colleges locally and saying, hey, how do we apply for full scholarships, right, for the kids there? Like how do we do that, and navigating some of the immigration laws to get kids to come over to work, and that we have teams in each of those countries doing that right now.
That's fantastic. That's a lot of work. I know that's a
Yeah,
lot of work for you guys.
yes,
How are you working on, you said it a little earlier, keeping the kids, I'm going to use my words, kind as they continue to grow, as they get out of the schooling system and now are maintaining their lives? How are you guys keeping up with them so that
yeah.
we keep seeing this individual that went from an area that had no hope to all of a sudden they do have hope?
Yeah. It's in some ways it's raised in the culture, right? There's a culture of kindness and the culture of generosity baked into the organization. I think organizations have a culture and ethos. You can sometimes think of a company and be like, well, that's a really cutthroat company. It's really well known, its reputation. And then you think everybody from that company has a little bit of an edge, cutthroatness. Shanti Bhavan's culture is very much a culture of like, we are a culture that the leadership and the team understands we're an outcome oriented organization. So we may be a nonprofit, but our outcomes are important. So we have to be able to educate a child, and they have to get them out of poverty. But simultaneously, our child's culture of kindness and giving and generosity. And that you see in all sorts of ways. So, for instance, a really special tradition at Shanti Bhavan is on a birthday, rather than get a gift, kids give away gifts. They give little chocolates away to everybody in the entire school. And it's really beautiful to see, but I've never seen it before until I got to Shanti Bhavan, culture of giving away gifts on your birthday rather than receiving. And another one is when there is a special treat, like a chocolate bar or something on campus, kids will always divide it and give it to like their friends and their classmates. No one ever takes something for themselves. They always think of it, how do we give it to the rest of the community? You see it on the big national exams when the kids take in the 12th grade and 10th grade, they have these big national exams called the ICSC and the ISC. It's a little bit like the SATs, maybe in the US, in the same kind of way. And when the kids who are taking that go into the exam hall and they come out, the rest of the school like explodes in applause and cheering, as if like the kids have just fought this big battle, or won this big soccer match. The rest of the kids are really genuinely happy for those kids who are taking on those tests. And my culture permeates from top to bottom. In the documentary series Daughters of Destiny, I think maybe one of the episodes showed how a bunch of preschoolers were coming to the school for the first time, and how some of the older girls were helping them get used to being at the school and taking care of them. That actually happens a lot. The older kids look out for the younger ones and are always helping them get assimilated and feeling encouraged and playing them and mentoring them and teaching them. So much of that. So when they graduate and go on to college and to work, that culture stays with them. And it's reinforced by two different ways. One is an alumni association that they created, So they see each other really regularly and keep in touch with each other and help reinforce the cultural values of the organization. And second, we have our team really supports that too. Our team checks in with them, and we have a alumni officer whose job primarily is to help our alumni as they go through college and enter the workforce, but also helps remind them of some of the values of the school. And of course, the kids come back and visit too, so that helps.
For me, Ajit, it's always been the thinking is we've gone so much further in our technology, in our comfort, all the things that a human being could use, especially in the Western world, but we haven't improved our humanity as much. And that's honestly what drew me to you guys. Is like, this is the model that we need to expand further instead of only thinking about success in ways of financial success or portfolio success. And you mentioned that. So, how do you train in that? Because you're teaching them education and you're teaching them also all kinds of leadership and things. Is that like intentional to teach them that part of humanity?
Oh yeah, it is. I think it is both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. In the classroom, we have some classes around those very specific topics where they are discussing human rights leaders and organizations and social movements that have changed, like from the civil rights movement to the Indian independence movement and environmental movements, and all of the different topics are discussed and debated, critically analyzed. That's actually part of our curriculum. But also, we are having those discussions outside of the classroom too, in assembly, on the playground, in offices. We're constantly having these discussions amongst ourselves and with the kids to help create the culture that's enforced. And finally, we live those values as members of the team. If you preach one thing and you do a different thing, the kids will pick up on it really quickly. So I try to be particularly whenever I'm with the kids, I try to be my best self. I try to be very, very observant, um, very, very knowledgeable. That the kids are very observant, that they're watching you very intently, and they're picking up on every small thing. And I realize that if I am not always acting in accordance with my own words, the kids will know it, and it will hurt them, and it will make them doubtful, and it will send them the wrong messages. So myself and the rest of the team, we always keep that front of mind that we have to live the values we espouse to our children.
Ajit, I have a couple more questions, but how is the best way for people that are listening or watching to get in touch with you, to connect, contribute, whichever?
Yeah, I think just come into the website. It's you just Google Shanti Bhavan Children, or it's shantibhavanchildren.org. You can get the website. If you Google my name, Ajit George, you can find it very easily, and then you can get to the organization from there. Just contact me as through the organization or making a donation through the organization would be incredibly helpful.
Not how, are there groups or companies that are collaborating with you to take this mission further right now?
Yeah, we have various different partner organizations that have been supportive and made monetary donations. What's been great, particularly if you decide you do want to do a donation, is often companies will do matches. Your company might match your donation to us, but sometimes companies also have a corporate giving option. So if you're listening and you're interested in helping that way, maybe talk to your corporate giving officer and say, hey, can we donate to Shanti Bhavan? In the US, we're a 501c3, so we're eligible for all tax donations in the US. In India, we are ADG, and that also allows for the same. We have FCRA accreditation, so that allows for the nonprofit donations there. And the same we have in Canada, in London, sorry, Canada, the UK, and Australia very soon. That paperwork's all in place too. So there's multiple ways to give and support. And we've also started to pair with different organizations too. So there's an organization called Broadway Arts Education, and they support us in the arts for the kids, like theater or music or visual arts. And they, because there's a strong extracurricular component to the school as well. And so they do remote teaching or in-person teaching for the kids. And it's great to have like nonprofit partners like that as well.
I hope that the people are getting that you are much more than a school, that you literally are changing the lives of not only that kid, but their family and everything that they touch going forward.
Yeah.
And I think that was your dad's intention from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the tests for a nonprofit, with or whichever nonprofit you're thinking about is where did your donation go 5 years later, right? Where did the kid that you were supporting, or where are they 5 years later? What I often see is you'll see it headlines in like the New York Times, like so and so education organization has educated 10,000 kids this year. What you never see is a follow up 5 years later. Where did those 10,000 kids go, right? Um, a lot of organizations try to do large numbers, but they never do follow up to tell you what happened. With every single one of our kids in our program, I could tell you where they are now. I could tell you what has happened with them, where they are 5 years later, but 10 years later. Where are the trajectories? What are the careers? How many people have they impacted? We do surveys and surveys, constantly keeping in contact with our kids to see their trajectories, sometimes the obstacles they face, and help them through those obstacles, but then see where they go next. So we are a long-term sustainable organization, an organization that really is about deep intervention and not about the immediate change so that we can say, oh, well, we educated this child. No, we're looking for actual systemic change. What happens to the child the rest of their lives, and who do they impact out of that? And that's a big difference.
Ajit, I could talk to you for hours, honestly, but I would like to know, is there something that you would like the world to hear from you in how they can best truly support you guys to continue to expand because you are impacting generations?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is the world seems really dark right now, and people feel I think, can feel very overwhelmed and feel very desperate. And they think there's nothing they can do to make a positive impact. And I believe in the opposite. I believe in hope. I believe in embracing hope and embracing a better future. Um, I think we are not only educating children, we are empowering the next generation of custodians who may change the shape of the future of the world for very positive outcomes. They're full of hope, they're full of ambition, they have a drive to be successful, but to do good as well, and to make a real difference in their lives and the lives of others. And I think investing in those children and investing in us is investing in the future of humanity. I really believe it. I believe that the world has tipped, for good or for bad, on the axis of a few dozen people making very different decisions. Right? You see those world leaders who made specific choices to go in one direction or the other. I think we're going to get a generation of kids out of the first school, and we're about to open a second school in 2024. And I think they're going to work together, and you're going to see them as a movement. And I think investing in them, investing in our school, is investing in the hope for a better world. So I hope that resonates with people, and I hope it gives them a little bit of hope and a way that they can contribute positively to it.
Ajit, did you ever think when you joined your dad on this mission that you would turn out doing the things that you're doing now and as passionate about it?
No, I think everything was so overwhelming and too big to understand. And it took the journey, right? It is the journey where each day you learn a little bit more about both the work you're doing, why it matters, and a little bit about yourself. Like I learned a hell of a lot about who I was as a person through the work I am doing. And I became a much better person through the work. I'm really grateful for that. It's been incredible,
Beautiful.
and I'm very lucky.
Beautiful. Ajit, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time. And for our listeners, look them up. We'll put the link in here. Contribute any way that you can. This is about changing the way that we live as a world because we're all connected. Everything is linked to all of us. And remember, our attitude always determines our altitude in life. Ajit, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rima. It's been a pleasure.